dispassion, and having controlled his senses, Brahma, the self-born living creature, evolved great sages as his beloved sons. Well, this is after giving birth to demoniac sons, so that's good. Now we're going to uh, equalize the sons. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes, the ritualistic performances of sacrifice are meant for material economic development. In other words, they are meant to keep the body in good condition for cultivation of spiritual knowledge. But for actual attainment of spiritual knowledge, other qualifications are needed. What is essential is vidya, or worship of the Supreme Lord. Sometimes the word yoga is used to refer to the gymnastic performance of different bodily postures, which help a mental concentration. Generally, the different bodily postures in the yoga system are accepted by less intelligent men to be the end of yoga, but actually they are meant to concentrate the mind upon the Supreme Soul, the Super Soul. After creating persons for economic development, Brahma created sages who would set the example for spiritual realization. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Text 53. To each one of these sons, the unborn creator of the universe gave a part of his own body, which was characterized by deep meditation, mental concentration, supernatural power, austerity, adoration, and renunciation. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word viraktimat in this verse means possessed of the qualification of renunciation. Spiritual realization cannot be attained by materialistic persons. For those who are addicted to sense enjoyment, spiritual realization is not possible. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that those who are too attached to seeking material possessions and material enjoyment cannot reach yoga samadhi, absorption in Krishna consciousness. Propaganda that one can enjoy this life materially and at the same time spiritually advance is simply bogus. The principles of renunciation are four: to avoid illicit sex life, to avoid meat eating, to avoid intoxication, and to avoid gambling. These four principles are called tapasya, or austerity, to absorb the mind in the Supreme. In Krishna consciousness is the process of spiritual realization. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 20th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Conversation Between Maitreya and Vidura. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So when it says that in this verse, to each one of his sons, the unborn creator of the universe gave a part of his own body, which was characterized by deep meditation, mental concentration, supernatural power, austerity, adoration, and renunciation. So when it says gave a part of his own body, it doesn't mean he cuts some part of his body off and gives it to his sons. It means that he gives knowledge in the form of deep meditation, mental concentration, supernatural power, austerity, adoration, and renunciation. So these type of qualifications uh, of renunciation are necessary for an exalted son of Brahma. And it's only natural that such an exalted father can give such exalted uh, characteristics to his sons. And here it says, spiritual realization cannot be attained by materialistic persons. Well, who's a materialistic person? A person who's only interested in satisfying the body and not really interested so much in the soul. In fact, they don't even realize they have a soul. They think that the soul and the body is the same thing. And therefore, they just do things that are pleasing to their body, but nothing that is related to the soul. So spiritual realization cannot be attained by materialistic persons. For those who are addicted to sense enjoyment, spiritual realization is not possible. Well, you can say 99% of the people in the world are addicted to sense gratification. And that means that there are very few people really interested in spiritual advancement. And that's why Prabhupada says that for those who are addicted to sense enjoyment, spiritual realization is not possible. And in Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that those who are too attached to seeking material possessions and material enjoyment cannot reach yoga samadhi or absorption in Krishna consciousness. Propaganda that one can enjoy this life materially and at the same time spiritually advance is simply bogus. The principles of renunciation are four. 1. Avoid illicit sex life. 2. Avoid meat eating. 3. To avoid intoxication. And 4. To avoid gambling. These four principles are called tapasya or austerity. To absorb the mind in the Supreme in Krishna consciousness is the process of spiritual realization. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports, the third canto, 20th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Conversation Between Maitreya and Vidura. So this meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, intoxication, these are things that we have to renounce, give them up, no longer even think of them, so that we can make some spiritual advancement. And the more we're expert at avoiding these four types of sinful activities, gambling, illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and and uh, and yeah, so these four things destroy the ability of a devotee to perform tapasya or austerity, and it's it's just difficult or impossible to absorb the mind in the Supreme or in Krishna consciousness. So therefore, when one actually gives up meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, intoxication, takes up chanting Hare Krishna, it's possible to absorb the mind in the Supreme in Krishna consciousness. And that's called the process of spiritual realization. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 20th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Conversation Between Maitreya and Vidura. So you see, the conversation of enlightened personalities are edifying. They're educational. They're helping one understand what to do and what not to do. You learn from devotees what to do, and you learn from non-devotees what not to do. So both ways you learn. Okay, so we'll go on now to chapter 21, conversation between Manu and Kardama. Text number 1. Vidura said, the line of Swayambhuva Manu, meaning the living entities who are in the family of Swayambhuva Manu, was most esteemed, O worshipful sage. I beg you, give me an account of this race, whose progeny multiplied through sexual intercourse. So it's talking about the family of Swayambhuva Manu, who were very highly qualified personalities. Okay, so it's good to hear about the lives of highly uh, spiritual personalities so that we know what the right thing to do is in life. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Regulated sex life to generate good population is worth accepting. Actually, Vidura was not interested in hearing the history of persons who merely engage in sex life, but he was interested in the progeny of Swayambhuva Manu because in that dynasty, good devotee kings appeared who protected their subjects very carefully with spiritual knowledge. By hearing the history of their activities, therefore, one becomes more enlightened. An important word used in this connection is parama samata, samat, which indicates that the progeny created by Swayambhuva Manu and his sons was approved by the great authorities. In other words, sex life for creating exemplary population is acceptable to all sages and authorities of Vedic scripture. Well, today we see that the lives of sense gratifiers are usually glorified, and the lives of genuine devotees are ignored. Uh, so, if you hear about the lives of sense gratifiers, you don't make any spiritual advancement. So today we're hearing about Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden and Mr. Soros and just people like that are just what you would call money grabbers, just interested in making money and spending money for sense gratification and engaging in all kinds of sinful activities. So hearing about people like that is not very edifying or educational for devotees. Devotees should hear about Prahlad Maharaj and Dhruva Maharaj and Vaishnava Acharyas and Vaishnava uh, Alvars and things like people like that who were expert at controlling the senses and focusing the mind on Krishna. These other people, they don't know how to control their senses, and their mind is focused mostly on mundane subjects. So therefore, you don't get any benefit by hearing about their lives, their accomplishments, and so forth. So usually, most of the uh, history books are about people who were not actually devotees. So in school, you hear about uh, people like Alexander the Great, and then there's uh, people like baseball players and football players and generals, General Eisenhower and so forth. All these people are sense gratifiers. Do they hear about saintly people? Not much. Every once in a while, there's a little bit, but not really, sincere personalities like Brahma and uh, other Vaishnavas. I don't think anywhere they talk about Vaishnavas in school. Do they? No. You'd have to go to the temple to hear about the Vaishnavas. Although the Vaishnavas are the greatest personalities in the history of the world. But you will hear about, Napoleon and, people who are, uh, big uh, sense gratifiers. Uh, and their lives are usually miserable. They have a period where they're very successful in conquering and killing people, and then they get conquered, and then a new set of nonsense people come take over. So it's one set of nonsense people, and then another set of nonsense people, and then another uh, a group of nonsense people. So that's basically the history of the world. Just like you have President Trump, and then now he's not president. Then you have President Biden. Then he won't be president. Then another person will come, and they're all nonsense. They're all engaged in different types of sinful activities. So you don't really get a good, what you would call, uh, example of a human being. You hear a lot about people who are not really good examples of human beings. So it doesn't really help a person to learn that type of history. So in school, they have what's called history courses. Right? You have any history course? What?
They talk like there's a lot of so there's a specific one where they talk about all these native people who are like really great people. Like for example, like Abraham Lincoln, all these people. We talk about them in February school, but there's no history for them. In elementary, there's no history, I believe.
Well, talking about Abraham Lincoln is history.
But
Yeah,
like,
they have like Black History Month and
yeah, Black History Month.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's in February.
yeah,
Every Friday they say some new random person.
right. All nonsense people.
And they have to bring students up to the office to check out that person.
They what?
They bring students from the fifth grade to come to the office to
Yeah.
speak in the microphone, and so that all the classes will hear the
Oh, really? So they're publicizing nonsense people to everybody. Yeah, interesting.
office has like this main microphone that can go into like every single classroom. When they speak into it, every single classroom can hear. The teacher that's in every classroom tells everybody to stop what they're doing and listen. And then they say this blurb about some random person. Um, and normally the teachers will put it on this big TV thing.
Mhm.
You can picture.
This is called indoctrination. Look that word up. Indoctrination. It has nothing to do with a doctor. They are what you call uh, priming you or not educating you, but brainwashing you to believe that those people are great. Yeah,
Of teaching a person or a group is to accept a set of beliefs uncritically.
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 Yeah, yeah. In other words, they're pretending that these people that you're hearing about are significant people for as paradigms for society, but actually they're all nonsense. Look up the word paradigm. I mean, if you really want to teach history, you should hear the history of Prahlad Maharaj and the Vaishnavas. Then you'll get a little bit of a good education. Go ahead.
A typical example of or pattern of something, a model. There is a new paradigm for public art in this country.
Yeah. So
So,
what they're teaching you is about the lives of really low class people, and you don't really get any spiritual benefit by hearing about what they've done. They can be, military people, they can be sports people, they can be basketball players.
They only measure their whatever the success or greatness in the material dimension.
Yes, yes.
There is no emphasis on the character of the person, values,
Spiritual
spiritual
values.
values.
Exactly. Okay, thank you. Well, we're on chapter 21 now. Conversations between Manu and Kardama. And text 1 says, Vidura Uvacha. In other words, Vidura said, the line of Swayambhuva Manu was most esteemed, O worshipful sage. I beg you, give me an account of this race, whose progeny multiplied through sexual intercourse. Well, throughout history that is being taught in schools, it's about what you would call uh, races of people who were basically low class. Like, for example, you hear about Napoleon, you hear about Genghis Khan, you hear about, all these nonsense people that were more or less, invaders or people who came and conquered other people. You hear about, there's a lot of programs about the Nazis, and there's a lot of programs about the mafia. There's a lot of programs about uh, the uh, criminals. There's not so much. There's some programs about Jesus Christ. That's a fact. And especially in Christmas time, they'll tell the story about Jesus Christ. But it's like a historical type of history. They don't really emphasize the spiritual aspects. A little bit, but not much. Yeah. What did you want to say?
not scripts, turning into books, and making the school library and high school library. There are at least um uh at least two copies of the like Nazi story.
Yeah, exactly. And what happens is that the the books about the Nazis or about uh, Alexander the Great and things like that, it inspires kids not to, uh, let's say, dislike them, but many kids end up wanting to emulate them. Emulate them means to be like them, uh, be a conqueror, be able to take over an entire country and exploit it. So, I mean, the reason they talk about these people is because they're trying to convince kids not to like them, to think that what they're doing is wrong. And what we're doing is actually wrong. Uh, that's why there's so many war pictures, war uh, stories and war movies and things like that, where you hear about how the United States was able to defeat the Nazis and then the Japanese and so forth. But it's all about killing and bombing and machine guns and there's nothing really educational otherwise. Uh, you know, Sometimes there's some heroic person that does tapasya to kill people. Okay, it's supposed to be what's called a hero. The more people that person killed, the more they're considered heroic. But it's not really uh, heroic. It's actually simply glorifying murder and fighting. Now you might say, well, wait a minute. The whole Battle of Kurukshetra, it's all about killing. You know, uh, no, actually, the history of the Pandavas is about controlling their senses and engaging in righteous war and uh, uh, spreading Krishna consciousness. So you could say, well, wait a minute, the United States, uh, by defeating the Japanese and then the Nazis, it was a righteous war because these other people were demons. There's some validity to that, but basically, there's not much difference between the so-called warriors. The Americans eat meat, and the Nazis eat meat. The Americans have illicit sex. The Nazis have illicit sex. Or the Japanese also have illicit sex and eat meat. So you're not really getting a uh, example of uh, sattvic or uh, um, spiritual warriors. You're getting the knowledge about materialistic warriors. Now, who's a spiritual warrior? Well, Arjuna was a spiritual warrior. And in history, you have also other spiritual warriors. And they don't have to be warriors. You have the history of Jesus Christ. He was not a warrior. You have the history of uh, Krishna. Now, Krishna, he was not considered a Kshatriya because he was born in a family of Vaishyas. So, but yet he was able to function like a Kshatriya also when there was a need for it. So, hearing the history of Krishna, you actually get an education. Hearing the history of Napoleon, you don't really get much education. If anything, you get a corruption of the mind by hearing about Napoleon, or else if you hear about World War II heroes, yeah, they were in a sense, the American heroes or fighters were fighting basically on the right side, and they defeated the Japanese and they defeated the Nazis. But one time, Prabhupada said that Hitler was not that bad, you know, and everyone, got all emotional when they heard that. Uh, and another time, he said that he didn't think that so many Jews were killed by the Nazis, and people went berserk when they heard that. So uh, there's a saying that history books are usually written by the conquerors and not by the conquered. So when history books are written by the conquerors, uh, they're glorified, even though they might commit very, very bad things. And the conquered people don't really write history books. They actually do, but more emphasis is given to the conquerors' history books. So in school, you'll probably learn about the conquerors, the ones that have prevailed over other people who are the conquered. Now, if you look at let's see, what happened in the World War II. In World War II, there were the Allies, like United States and Great Britain and the French and so forth. And then there was the Germans or the Nazis. So at one point, the Nazis were conquering, you know, France and the Netherlands and other countries, and then the United States entered the war and was helping England and eventually the allies, like the Canadians, the Americans, and uh, the English. They all worked together to defeat the Nazis. So, was Hitler a good person? No, he was a nonsense person. He was a racist. He he wanted to eliminate uh, living beings or people that he thought were not worthy of being, you know, citizens of a country. So they were. So he actually killed not just Jews. He killed uh, homosexuals. He killed uh, people that were physically deformed and who had mental problems. He put those people in the gas chambers also. It wasn't just the Jews that were being killed by Hitler. And why did he do that? Because he wanted to create what you would call the Übermensch. Übermensch is a German phrase. It means superior human beings. So the way to do that was by killing those human beings who they considered to be inferior human beings. So now the definition of a superior and inferior human being is based on the body, not on the basis of their spirituality. So uh, that was called, well, okay, look up the word eugenics. Eugenics. That, if I'm not mistaken, it's choosing children, babies that are born that seem to be superior or part of what's called a superior race. What does it say?
The scientifically erroneous.
What? What? Erroneous? That means false. Go ahead.
Racial and clean
And what?
breeding.
And that means that they kill babies that they think are inferior, and they only keep the babies that they think that are superior, right? And not just babies. You can also adults that they think are inferior. Like for example, you have well, the Nazis were killing not just Jews; they were killing uh, homosexuals. They were killing also Slavic people uh, and different people that they considered were inferior human beings. And in order to purify the race of people, they tried to eliminate those people that they thought were not, uh, part of the Germanic stock, let's say, Germanic race. So these type of theories uh, uh, were started not in Germany, it started in the United States. Eugenics, in other words, uh, choosing people that are superior and killing people that are not superior, started in the United States. It didn't start in Germany. Why don't you look it up? There was a woman who was eugenics. First of all, you look up the word eugenics, right? You look that up, right? It's identifying some people as superior and others as inferior. That started in the United States, and then the Nazis picked up on it in Germany. There's a whole history about this. So why don't you look up the history of eugenics, where it started? It's very interesting to know this because uh, you can see how evil some people were in the United States. Go ahead.
The term eugenics was coined in 1883 by Francis Galton, an English statistician.
Statistician.
Mhm.
In other words, he was counting the number of people in the world, something like that. Go ahead.
Ethnologist and cousin Charles Darwin,
And what?
and, and the cousin of Charles Darwin.
Okay, well, Darwin was another nonsense person. He was a real atheist, big time atheist. And Darwinism, we'll look up Darwinism later on. Go ahead, keep reading.
Galton derived the word from the Greek "junes", which means good in birth or good in stock. He first used the term in his book Inquiries into Human Fertility and its development to define eugenics
Eugenics.
as the study of agencies under social control that may improve or impair the racial qualities of future generations, either physically or mentally.
In other words, they choose people who they think are superior and they kill people who they feel are inferior.
Dalton believed
Who? Who? Believe?
Dalton,
How do you spell his name?
Dalton.
Galdon. Okay, go ahead. What? Dion. Yeah. Go ahead.
Dalton believes that parity
Inherit. Yeah.
is the basis for health, disease, social characteristics, and intellectual traits. He was influenced by Darwin's theory of selection. Natural selection and advocated for a system that would allow the more suitable races or strains of blood a better chance of prevailing speedily over the less suitable.
Now, see, that is actually a false philosophy of Darwin. He said that there's this uh, the uh, what was that phrase? Something of the fittest, survival of the fittest. So they were trying to figure out how the different races of people evolved, and they came up with this theory of the survival of the fittest. It was not how the different races, uh, the uh, how nature is working, and it was on the basis of this theory called survival of the fittest. Now look up survival of the fittest. The only problem is that all the less, let's say, fittest species are still existing. Go ahead.
Phrase that describes the mechanism of natural
A what? What was the first word? A what? A phrase, yes.
describes the mechanism of natural selection and Charles Darwin's theory of evolution.
Right. Yes. And Charles Darwin's theory of evolution is actually false, not true. But he made it up, and it sounded right to people. There's it's the survival of the fittest. Look up that phrase, survival of the fittest. What does it mean?
It's a phrase that describes the mechanism of natural selection and Charles Darwin's theory of evolution.
Right. Now, his idea was that the different species evolved little by little over time. And by little changes due to uh, mistakes made by nature. So this was his theory of how all the different species evolved. The theory is completely false. There's no truth, and there's no experimentation to prove his theory. So it was not really fact. It was some fantasy that he created in his mind, and many people accepted it. This idea of survival of the fittest. In other words, only those living beings that were superior would exist, and the inferior living beings would die. But it's not true, because all the living beings are still there. The ones that are so-called superior and the ones that are so-called inferior. Like if you have, uh, four-legged animals, and then you have two-legged animals, and you have snakes that don't have legs, so you would think that, okay, snakes don't have legs, therefore they're not as I mean, they have their way of defending themselves, but they would be basically wiped out by the living entities that have legs, like elephants and giraffes and things like that. So you see, it was a whole theory of survival of the fittest that was false. And it was trying to prove that the ones that are not as fit as the more superior animals, all the lesser animals will die, and you'll just have the fittest or most, uh, you know, the animals that are most capable of defending themselves. But no, all the species are still there. See? So the whole theory was false, but yet people believed it. And then they used that same idea on human beings. And and then the Americans, it was a lady actually that came up in America. It came up with this idea of eugenics. Now, did you look that up? Eugenics? What does it say?
By World War One, many political leaders and scientific authorities supported eugenics. In Great Britain, the United States, Germany were leaders in the international movement.
Where did it start from? Look at, and who are the names of the people that started it? You have to look in the history of eugenics.
Eugenics was coined in 1883 by Francis Galton,
Who was what?
an English statistician, ethnologist, and cousin of Charles Darwin. He is the one first coined the term, and the term was adapted by World War One by many political leaders and scientific authorities, including Great Britain, United States, and Germany.
Including what?
Great Britain.
Oh, Great Britain,
Great Britain.
United States. Okay, now look into United States eugenicists. You're going to see that the Nazis learned about eugenics from the Americans. Yeah.
Eugenics, the practice of improving the genetic quality of the human population, was a significant part of American culture from the late 19th century to the mid 20th century, during the Progressive Era. Intellectuals increasingly promoted the cause. Charles Benedict Davenport is considered by some to be the father of the American eugenics movement.
Yeah, it was in the United States. It wasn't the Nazis. The Nazis learned from the Americans about, killing lesser living beings or human beings and having a super race of superior human beings. Yeah.
Positive eugenicists who promoted procreation among the fittest in society encouraged middle-class women to bear more children. Between 1900 and 1960, eugenicists appealed to middle-class white women to become more family-minded and to help better the race.
Right. The whole thing is based on the body. You see, Krishna consciousness, everything is about the soul. And all these theories that come up, it's all about the body. And they all fail over time. It looks like they're succeeding for a little bit, but eventually it fails because it's false. So whenever you accept something that's false, it's going to fail. There might be a period where it looks like it's succeeding, but over time it will fail because it's false. It's not true. Okay. So Hitler, he believed in having a superior race of men. And so in the what was it, 1936, there was the Olympic Games in, I think it was in Europe. And what?
I think it was.
No, I know that, but I'm talking about 1936. The Olympic Games were in Europe.
And then first going on at the games of the Exile Olympiad in Berlin in 1936 took place in Berlin, Germany.
Yeah, Berlin, Germany, right. So that's when Hitler wanted to show how the Germans were superior to other races. But it just so happened that some black participants in the Olympic Games from the United States won more trophies than the German white guys.
Mm.
So, uh, so that the whole idea of a superior race, that's been there since the beginning of time. And just like the Jews believe that they are a superior race, maybe not all of them, but some of them believe like that they are a superior race and superior intelligence. And they give examples. They say, well, Einstein was a Jew. Jesus was a Jew. You know, they go down a list of all these so-called great people that were Jewish, all based on the body, not based on the soul. So it's a dangerous type of philosophy to think that there is a superior race of people and the inferior races should be eliminated because they're contaminating the human race. Right? And so they come up with these theories like eugenics and so forth. And uh, so obviously it's a very racist concept, and it has been, in a sense, uh, covered up or defeated. However, there are still people like that want to create a super race of human beings, but it's not based on their, let's say, behavior. It's based on their bodily uh, identity. So uh, the superior race, uh, if you want to talk about that, is actually Vaishnavas in a sense because uh, they're merciful, they're humble, they're kind, they're completely spiritually inclined, and so forth. So that has nothing to do with the body. It has to do with their uh, relationship with Krishna. But most of the materialistic concepts of a superior race was based on the body. All of it was based on the body. And it failed. And many people suffered because of it. So what did Hitler do? He killed gypsies because he thought they were uh, inferior people. He killed the Slavic people because he thought they were inferior. He killed the Jews because he thought that they were corrupting society. And in this way, arbitrarily, he defined groups of people that were inferior, and then he tried to kill them, to eliminate them. And of course, it didn't work. And all it did was create a terrible war where so many people died. And actually, two times the Germans were defeated in war. It was catastrophic for Germany. especially, so many German men died. It was terrible. You know. And it was all because of these crazy ideas about superior race. You know. Actually, Hitler, he wanted to, he didn't want to kill all the British. He thought that they had Germanic blood in them. So, but then he changed his mind and started killing them also. It's all speculation. It's all nonsense, and it's demoniac. You know. Okay, so now it is 7:27. So now we're beginning chapter 21, conversation between Manu and Kardama. And it says, Vidura said, the line of Swayambhuva Manu was most esteemed. That means very highly respected. O worshipful sage, I beg you, give me an account of this race whose progeny multiplied through sexual intercourse. Well, so you see, the Bhagavatam is speaking about people who are transcendental, not people who are physically superior, but spiritually inclined. And here it says, give me an account of this race. Race means this type of people whose progeny, whose children multiplied through sexual intercourse. Okay, purport. Regulated sex life to generate good population is worth accepting. So this is not eugenics. Eugenics is you create superior people by killing off the people that you consider inferior. But that's not what being which is that is not what is being said here. Prabhupada explains. Regulated sex life to generate good population is worth accepting. So the whole point is, how do you get a good population? And what is the definition used for good population? So the Nazis thought it's to increase the Germanic race and decrease the races that they thought were inferior, like the Gypsies and the Jews and so forth. They had a whole list of inferior races. But here Prabhupada says, regulated sex life to generate good population is worth accepting. Actually, Vidura was not interested in hearing the history of persons who merely engaged in sex life, but he was interested in the progeny, meaning children, of Swayambhuva Manu, because in that dynasty, good devotee kings appeared who protected their subjects very carefully with spiritual knowledge. By hearing the history of their activities, therefore, one becomes more enlightened. An important word used in this connection is parama samata, which indicates that the progeny, meaning children, created by Swayambhuva Manu and his sons, was approved by the great authorities. In other words, sex life for creating exemplary population is acceptable in all sages and authorities, is acceptable to all sages, meaning wise people and authorities of Vedic scripture. Okay, so what's the difference between what I just read and eugenics and the Übermensch, as the Germans said, the superior race? It sounds almost the same, right? But it's not. Prabhupada says sex life for creating exemplary population is acceptable to all sages and authorities of Vedic scripture. So how do you produce exemplary population? Okay, I will accept. We will discuss that in length tomorrow. Your homework is to look up the term Ubermensch, Ubermench, superior race in German language. Because what we just read in this purport, it almost sounds the same. In other words, sex life for creating exemplary population is accepted to all sages and authorities of Vedic scripture. So let's compare Ubermensch, the idea the Germans had, the Nazis had, of creating superior human beings, to sex life for creating exemplary population. Haribol. That's your homework. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.
Meaning of this Maharaj, Uber,
Yes.
the
Hare
ideal
Krishna.
man of the future, the ideal superior man of the future.
Why does it say of the future? Because in the present, they're going to kill off all the living entities they think that are not ideal. And then they'll just have a super, population of supermen.
Who could rise above the conventional Christian morality to create and impose his own values.
Yeah.
It play against Christianity.
Against Christianity.
Yeah, basically, in fact, they specifically say they have to transcend the limitations of the traditional morality, conventional values.
Okay, well, we'll discuss this more tomorrow.
Can you
read
spell?
up.
Oh, can you spell
Yeah,
it one? Can you spell that word one more time that we need to look up?
Ubermensch. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Uber MENCH.
MENSCH.
UBNSCH.
Okay.
I'll post that also.
I will post it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Haribol.
All glory to Prabhupada.
See you in